Welcome to Regulated and Relational, a bi-monthly podcast brought to you by the Attachment and Trauma Network. Today, Ginger and Julie are joined by Meghan Ashburn, an educational consultant and parent mentor dedicated to supporting neurodiverse children. We can't think of a better guest during April, which is Autism Awareness and Celebrate Neurodiversity Month. Let's join them.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Regulated and Relational, our podcast produced by the Attachment and Trauma Network. I'm Julie Beam.
And I'm Ginger Healy.
And together we're excited to share with you from both our personal experiences and our professional knowledge what it truly means to be attachment-focused, trauma-informed, and how we can help children impacted by early childhood trauma. Today, we have a guest in our studio. Her name is Meghan Ashburn, and we're so excited to have her. Ginger, can you introduce Meghan to everyone?
Oh my gosh, I would be thrilled to. I consider Meghan a friend and a mentor and all things amazing. So I've just been dying to have you here, Meghan, and so I'm going to introduce you to everybody. Meghan Ashburn is an educational consultant, former elementary school teacher. She's a parent mentor. She's chairperson of Virginia Beach's Special Education Advisory Committee, and she's co-author of the award-winning book, I Will Die on This Hill, which it was just so impactful and instrumental in my life, continues to be, and I wrote about it in my book too because of how powerful it is. Meghan advocates at the local, state, and national level of government for inclusion and communication rights. She has an amazing website, Not an Autism Mom, which she'll tell us about, and that is loaded with resources that help educators, administrators, parents, and it supports neurodivergent children inside the classroom and outside the classroom. So we definitely want to talk about that, Meghan, but I think where I want to start with you is talking about your personal journey, how you got to where you are today, where it all began in your passion and expertise in supporting neurodivergent children.
Well, thank you for that wonderful introduction. I'm blushing a little bit. It sounds impressive, but I mean, honestly, I feel like I started this journey very early on. I was actually raised in an inclusive preschool, and I was reverse included in there. And I feel like that has really framed a lot of the way I think about inclusion and the way I see that as being something that just works all the time. And I think that, the most recent part of my journey started with my own kids. So I was, a new mom. Well, to these kids, I had older kids, but I was, new to autism, new to neurodivergence. And I, like most parents, took my kids to the doctor. We got the assessments. We stayed in the doctor's office. I feel like way too much in hindsight. And I feel like it took me way too long to find the resources and the mentors that I needed. And that's kind of what drove me to do this in a more public way, in advocacy and outward advocacy, because I didn't want other parents to take as long as I did to find the autistic community, to find the resources that the autistic community has made for us. And not just autistic people, but neurodivergent people as a whole. And so I guess I didn't want other parents to wait as long as I did. So that's what kind of drove me to do this type of advocacy.
That makes total sense. And it resonates with me, and I know with Ginger as well, because yes, once you experience something, and my journey was similar, but more in the realm of early childhood trauma. And it's like, once you experience it and realize how difficult the system is, or maybe it doesn't even exist, you want to create something that does, for sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So your book covers both your personal and professional experiences. If you could sum up what you think the core message that what you're trying to get readers to take away from your book, what would that be?
Jules and I laugh about this all the time because there really isn't one message in our book. It just kind of goes, it's like it skims along all of these different topics. I think if I could choose one core message, it would be to never stop learning and to never stop, never think you have all the answers, because there's more out there. And our book is really good at guiding people to other resources. So in our book, we just highlight so many ways that we've been learning. We highlight other people that we've been learning from. And I think that's really the core message of the book, is just to keep learning, keep being curious. If something doesn't sit right in your soul, it probably isn't right. And you can find why that is by learning.
Love it. Absolutely.
Yeah. And I think one of the things that really helped me from the book was talking about, like, that there can be educational trauma, that students can experience, trauma in schools, and our neurodivergent kids are at higher risk for that. So I think let's talk about that. Like, what does it look like? How does that impact our students academically and emotionally? And what can we do to reduce that educational traumas, particularly for neurodivergent students?
That is such a great question. And I want to caveat this by saying that most of the time, this is not like intentional trauma that's happening, right? This is a systemic issue. And our educators are doing the best they can with the tools that they have.
Thank you.
So I do want to caveat with that. But it shows up in a lot of different ways. And oftentimes it looks like noncompliance, because they're in that fight or flight. They're in that state of unsafetyness. That's not a technical word, but
we get it.
Right? They're in that state a lot, and it shows up as non-compliance, or sometimes we use the word aggression. Sometimes we use the word eloping, things like that. It shows up in these ways, and then because we're framing them in that type of way, it compounds it, because now we're punishing, or we're giving consequences to these emotions and this trauma that these kids are feeling, and then we're punishing them for that. So it just is cyclical, and it keeps going, and then it can show up as school avoidance, right? I don't like that word, because it's not I'm avoiding school, it's I am trying to protect myself from the place that I don't feel safe at.
Right.
And so, and then, we punish for that as well. So I think it's cyclical. And I think that really, if we can just accurately identify what's happening and show more compassion and just frame it in a different way, the way we talk about it can change the way we actually approach it, and the way we actually treat our kids.
Yes.
I mean, for me, like Rona Delahooke's work, that whole reframing thing that you just said, that she was the paradigm shift for me, especially for neurodivergence, in looking at behaviors so differently, understanding that they're adaptations, understanding, that this is helping this kid manage these sensations that we can't even imagine. And so I love that I don't think we can say reframe enough. And I know that you love Mona as much as we do.
That's like that's my favorite book on the planet. So.
Me too.
Yeah, Mona's one of our favorite people on the planet.
On the planet. And we'll put her book, and of course your book, in the show notes, because really, I think, if you can walk away with those two resources, your book and her book.
Read hers first. Read hers first. For sure. Like
foundation.
Hands down. Yeah.
No, we call that the paradigm shift around here, that if you can start shifting your view to widening the possibility that how you experience the world isn't the assumed way that the children are experiencing and that everybody else is experiencing the world, and that their behaviors are the communication that maybe they're not experiencing the world the same as you. That's the shift. That's the mind shift that takes you to the place to be able to be curious and more empathetic about what's going on, and start to see how what you don't think is impacting them at all could actually be impacting them.
I love the part in her book. It was such a small part. And I think it was like one sentence. And she said, you could be doing something with a kid. Let's just say that you're walking outside with them, and they have that reaction that they are afraid, or that they have that anxiety reaction, that adaptive response. And you look around and you're like, there's nothing, you're okay. There's nothing to be afraid of out here. It doesn't matter how you feel about it.
Right.
It doesn't matter what the parent, what the adult in the room feels about it. It matters how they're feeling. That's the only thing that matters.
Yes.
And so if we can really bring ourselves to try to look at it from how their perspective, and understand that their feelings are valid, then we can do better at responding to that.
Yes, for sure. No,
Yeah.
that's the crux of the wisdom in all of this, I think. So let's talk about your work around IEPs and individual education plans, for those of you out there listening, wanting that definition, and that in your work, you prioritize the emotional well-being alongside the academic needs, which I think is incredibly important.
Yes.
So talk to us about what it means to create a neuro-affirming IEP, what that looks like, and what role the emotional well-being plays in all of that.
There are so many pieces and so many ways to go on this question, because there's so many different parts of the IEP that you can really dig into. But I think that the one thing that we can do in an IEP is look at how we're describing the child. It's mainly comes from, usually it mainly comes from tests, right? And it comes from evaluations, and they're all deficit based, and it comes from outward behaviors, right? So it is almost always negative when somebody goes to read that IEP, like the next teacher that's going to have that child, all they see is the sum of their deficits. I'm using quotation fingers because that's what they're seeing. And if we can do better at describing the child, right, and we can use more accurate language, then we can start a kid with a teacher who sees the whole child, right? And who sees, yeah, this child does have a disability, or this child does have, these things that need help, that need support. However, this is a great child, right? This child has these strengths, right? We hardly ever see strengths that are actual strengths. We see like, oh, this is a bubbly child. However,
a bubbly child, but
one caveat of oh, we love this child, and then there's this, right? And so I remember one year I went through my kids' IEPs, and I used a red pen and I circled all of the words that said, non-compliant, defiant. I used to have a chart up here on my wall that had all those words up there, all of those negative words. And I tasked the IEP team with saying, let's be more accurate in what we're describing. So if you want to describe non-compliant, say what that looks like. Because once we start digging into what it looks like, when does this happen, then we start becoming more accurate, and we see that this is a response to something. This is something that he is struggling with. He is not being difficult. He's having a difficult time.
Right.
So, and we did. We went through all of those words, took them all out. And the IEP was more accurate. It was, I think it's not that I'm trying to frame it differently. It's not that we're trying to paint a rosy picture about a child, but we want to make sure we have accurate language.
Yes.
And that's how you can kind of push the issue on that, because it's not always easy to get that type of language out of that document. But that's one way that you can really strengthen the IEP by being more accurate. And then the other thing is the goals. Right. So the IEP is, I mean, really the center of it is the goals. And what I see the most of is compliance goals. Almost always they're compliance goals.
Right.
And those compliance goals usually hold those children to a higher standard than their non-disabled peers. I see that a lot. They're not developmentally appropriate in any means. For example, this child will sit down and do an activity for 7 minutes without getting up or something like that, right? That's a compliance goal. What other 5-year-old is sitting down for 7 minutes without getting up?
Right. Well, and they might be, but that's not the stated goal for them. And nobody's watching and maintaining that data on that other 5-year-old. So yeah. Yeah.
Why is that a goal? Why is that a goal?
Yeah. I mean, that's another thing. I mean, they're not developmentally appropriate goals, but they're also holding, this child who does have a disability to a higher standard than the other children in the room. So there's that part. And also compliance goals don't work on anything, right? So
they don't give the child a growing skill. They're not teaching them anything.
Right. That's not a skill. Compliance is not a skill. This is not
the adult agenda.
Not building any kind of regulation skills. It's not building any self-awareness skills. It's not helping them do what you want them to do. It's just forcing them to do what you want them to do, which doesn't usually work. I would say almost never works. So then, that compounds the trauma that is happening to this kid, because he or she is failing at this goal, always failing. So, all of that adds into it as well.
Yeah. So folks, we're going to take a break right now. And when we come back, we're going to get into Meghan's definition of neuro-affirming language and talk about why it's important to use that language to be supportive. So we'll see you in a minute.
Hi, I'm Lauren Cassis, an HCN board member and mental health professional. I am so excited to announce our new Building Resilient Communities for Children conference happening June 23rd and 24th. This virtual conference will have over 35 live sessions focusing on 5 tracks: parenting, education, youth justice, community leadership, and clinicians and counselors. We have some amazing speakers in each track. And get this, Dr. Bruce Perry is our opening keynote presenter. Registration is open now, with early bird pricing available through May 15th. There's special pricing for parents and caregivers to make it especially affordable, and a discount for nonprofit organizations. Professionals will be able to get continuing ed credit, and everyone will have access to the workshop recordings for 30 days after the conference. It's going to be a fantastic gathering of the adults who work with, care for, and love children to come together and learn more about how we can help to build resilience in our children. You can learn more at ATN's website. Look for BRCC Conference. I'll be there, and I hope you will join me.
Hi, folks. We're back with Meghan Ashburn. She's a parent advocate. She's been an educator, and she's an author of a wonderful book. And we're talking about neurodiversity. And right now, we want to talk to Meghan about the importance of using neurodiversity-affirming language, what that looks like in practice, and how that helps to create a supportive learning environment. So, Meghan, tell us about that, please.
Gosh, that's something that I've been working on and learning about for the last, I'm not sure how long, maybe 10 years now. It's something that doesn't come naturally. When we learn about autism and ADHD and other neurodiversities, we learn from a deficit paradigm. You know, we learn from
Yes.
that medical model first. And so it really takes a lot of learning, and I'm still learning all the time about, you know, how to describe these differences. And and some people would argue that describing them in a different way or using that language paints a rosy picture about a child. But I would argue that it's more accurate, and I use that word a lot. I think that might be my favorite word. But it goes deeper than what we are taught about neurodiversity and
Mm-hmm.
being neurodivergent. You only see those words being used like attention seeking and escape, or they say sensory, but it's not the sensory that we are thinking of. Um, but we have to recognize that there are way more reasons for a person to behave in a certain way, right? There's way more to it than that. And by learning from autistic people, like if you have a non-speaking kid in your classroom, learning from a non-speaking adult is how you're going to get that accurate language. They're going to describe their experiences, and not just one person, right? You want to have multiple people that you're learning from that will mentor you. But I think it's important to seek that out, and that has really helped me use more accurate language in the work that I do with families.
You've done that for me, Megan. And the one thing about your website is that it is like a community, a supportive community where you can ask questions and you can learn and you provide, resources and support. And so as a mom, that has been instrumental for me and has opened up doors to meeting other people. And, I have two adult kids who are autistic, and listening, it just I hope that I was listening to them before, but it really kind of opened my eyes to really listening to them. And I wish I had kind of had that knowledge or confidence and support years ago when they were younger, because I think that and hopefully educators now are getting more information about, how to create like neuro-inclusive classrooms. But as a mom, if that teacher isn't, that whole advocacy piece about it, I'm just thinking about myself. Would I have been brave enough to really talk to the teacher? I mean, I have this mama bear side, and yet sometimes I think, well, the teacher's the expert, right? I'm not going to tell the teacher how to do their job. So I love that you're also talking about empowering moms to talk to the teachers in how to create like a neuro-inclusive classroom, to use neuro-affirming language, to focus on strengths rather than deficits. And so maybe where I'm going with this is, can you talk a little bit about the advocacy piece for parents and caregivers on how to help the teacher create a neuro-inclusive classroom, and of course at home environment as well? I think this is a newer topic for some,
I do too.
so
I think the biggest piece of this is, when you're advocating with the schools and you're in your team, let's just put it as your team. So you're talking with your principal, you're talking with the teacher, you're talking with the other adults that are working with your kids. I think it's important to come from a place of let's work on this together, that kind of thing. And to know that it takes time, even if you have an amazing teacher who is willing to, do whatever, like learn with you, and even if you have that amazing team, know that it's not going to be perfect, and don't expect it to be perfect, because you don't want to hold the teacher to a higher standard than others, right? I mean, knowing that they have that same type of systemic uh,
yes.
uh, education, right? They have that same education, and the schools are not pushing for them to go out and learn and do this conference and do this conference and come back and let's change the whole program. They're not being offered that. So just coming from a place of, okay, we know that we're trying to do our best, and if we make some progress, every little bit of progress helps.
Yes.
And one way to do that is just to share what you're learning, right? So
Yes.
every year I have a brand new set of teachers for my twins. And so that's 2 sets of teachers. And now they're older, so they have lots of teachers. So I bring in books for all of them at the beginning of the year. I bring in different books based on what year it is. So in the beginning, I would bring in The Reason I Jumped, because that's such an easy read.
Yes.
And it really speaks to the younger child. Especially the ones that are not speaking. It brings that insight in. Another one that I would bring in is Uniquely Human.
Yeah.
That's a really great book, and the updated version has so many has so many contributions from non-speaking autistic people, other all types of autistic people, from just different experiences. And it's also an easy read, but it kind of reframes. It gives the beginning of that reframing. It kind of plants those seeds to reframe the way you're thinking about what's happening, the way you're seeing a child in your classroom. And then, of course, Beyond Behaviors. If you have a reader, if you're fortunate to have a teacher who loves to read,
Mm-hmm.
Beyond Behaviors, I'm sending that in every time.
Yeah.
But really approach it as if, this is something I'm learning about. I'm hoping that you can be learning about it too, so that we can support the child. Always bring it back to the child. We're here for the child. I think that that's something that's really important, because if you come in and you're like, you're not doing this right, this is harmful, which I've done before.
Yep. Yep. I need you to do this. I'm not happy with you. Then it becomes a you and them sort of thing.
It does. And ask how you can help, right? So come in and, if you have this, if you're able to do this, come in and volunteer in the classroom.
Mm-hmm.
Do the reading to the kids and things like that. And then you can model some of that behavior that you want to see from other adults in the room.
I love that. I had an experience a few months ago. I was traveling and I ran into a mom of a very young child. And we started talking because both we had kids with autism. And she told me that she was the year before so frustrated with the school, and then she decided, hey, what can I do? And she made this darling PowerPoint about her son and shared all his strengths, all his amazing things, and it changed everything. This was elementary, and she took it upon herself, and it was in such a non-threatening way. It was, I want to tell you about my child. And she said it just shifted everything in the classroom, because there had been kids who were afraid of him and didn't understand his behaviors. Now they started recognizing he's excited about something. Oh, he's scared about something. I know what to do if I feel scared. I know what to do if I'm excited, rather than that's weird. I don't understand. I'm going to stay away. And it was just,
I love
able
that
to make
idea
friends.
from that parent. And that it sparked something in me, especially if you have a kid who is not communicating effectively yet, right? So all they see when they go to school is, is that child who isn't able to communicate, who isn't able to share what they did that weekend, or share, anything outside of what they're seeing right now, and sending in a picture of what they did, right? Or sending in a video of you all doing something together. I remember one time I had a teacher text me and say, when you go outside, how do you do that?
Mm.
And it took me, I was like, oh, will we walk outside? You know what I mean? Like, it was,
What do you mean?
yeah, like, I'm not sure what you mean, but it was eye-opening that they don't know how to include my kid, because they don't know that my kid is always included. Like, we go do stuff, right? And so sharing videos of that is helpful for teachers and helpful for understanding that, it's not that complicated. It's really not. If you do have safety concerns, this is what we do, that kind of thing. And really helping the educators understand that this is something that can happen, right? This is something that is possible, even though you haven't seen it happen yet. Mm-hmm. And that's something that as parents, we don't understand. It took me a while to get that kids like my kid aren't included in schools at all. My kid is in 5th grade. He's an AAC user, mostly non-speaking. None of the teachers past, like, I don't even know how, I don't know if anybody had seen a kid included in their classroom before. And so we know that growing up, they didn't have anybody in their class in an inclusive environment, right? So like the gap of knowledge is serious. Like they do not have the skills for this.
Right.
So we have to help them build those skills.
Right. Right. No,
and
as you were
go ahead, Julie. Sorry.
As you were talking, I was thinking about my own experience, which has been a while ago, but my daughter was in a self-contained room where there were generally no parents volunteering to be the room parent, right? There was not a lot of social activity planned. And when I explored that with the teacher, first of all, I got shock and surprise that I was even interested in knowing that, but being in the classroom with them, trying to help facilitate whatever socialization and activities that they normally wouldn't have in this classroom, I learned a lot. I learned a lot about the teachers. They learned a lot about my child, and then the other children too, because everybody was engaging in a different way. And it was a good experience. It was scary for me as a parent to take that kind of leap, because I'm like Ginger going, well, the teachers are the experts here, but really yes and no, right? I mean, I
feel like we should just not say anybody's an expert anymore, right?
Right.
Like,
we should all be learners, right?
Yeah. There's no experts. I mean, obviously autistic people are experts on their own lives, and there's advocates who are really doing a lot of learning, and I'm not talking about them, but I'm talking about for professionals. I'm talking about for parents that are not neurodivergent. Like, we should just be taking the experts out, even the doctors.
Yeah. Well, it's because it also is very individual. My child and her neurodiversity is different than yours and different than Ginger's. And there's no way that one side is going to fit more than one at this.
And one other thing that I feel like I want to bring out, because you taught me this too in talking about language, was identity first, versus person first language. And I still get pushback on that if I say autistic kid versus child with autism. And I've used both in this podcast because I'm still kind of learning that. And I do think it depends on the child, but I don't know. Do you want to speak to that? Because you really taught me a lot about that.
Yeah, that's something that it comes up a lot. And I've almost done kind of like not a 180 on it, but the autistic community as a whole has said, our community preferred identity first. No, sorry. Yes. Thank you.
They want to say autistic. Right. Yeah.
Right. And so that's what I do. Right. But if a parent that I'm working with says, my child has autism, I've kind of done a 180 on that. Like, I'm not gonna argue with a parent,
correct, right?
Or if a person says, I have autism, like, I'm not arguing with that. I think that we get hung up on that sometimes.
Yes.
When we could be talking about something else.
Yes. And the reason that I bring it up is that, like, I'm the same with you, that I want to do what that person wants, what they feel comfortable with that, whether that's a parent, because we know where that parent heart and intention comes from when they speak about their child. And so now that I've got these adult kids, I want to do what they want to do, but so maybe, it's not worth bringing up except for that I think intention, and I think, just that there still is conversation around it, but so maybe we don't need to feed into
What
it, but
what I hear you saying, Megan, is that it distracts from the real work. If we're going to get
yes.
into how is this label going to, like, which way are we going to do this? I mean,
Yeah, and I think that, like, and I don't want to minimize it either, right? If this is an important topic for the autistic community, I want to be supportive
Mhm.
of that as
Right.
well. But
Right.
I will say that when it comes to the work that I'm doing on a daily basis, when it comes to like serving families individually and working, one-on-one with people, I just
Mhm.
don't even bring it up, right? I
Mhm.
use I use autistic. Um, I think on an advocacy level, when we're doing things in public and we're doing the type of work that we do, I think it's important to honor the autistic community as a whole, and I think that that's important. But with the work that I'm doing on a daily basis, and I think that's just changed for me a lot, because I am working more one-on-one with the community. It's not something that I've been uh, focused on, if that makes sense. Um,
Yes.
It does.
but but it is something that parents should learn about, and why are autistic people saying this? I think that that's something
Mhm.
that we should be encouraging parents, families to go seek out from the community, because their children are a part of that community.
Right.
So, and educators as well, like and doctors, right? You're serving
Yes.
this community. You have the ethical obligation to learn from that community that you're serving.
Yes.
So,
Thank you for that. That's exactly what I believe, and you said that so beautifully. Thank you for that.
Agree. Totally agree.
thanks. My words are coming to me today. That's helpful. It's always helpful when that happens.
Exactly. Yeah. When you're having a conversation and you can, yeah, yeah, say what you mean to say. That's great.
Yeah.
We've talked a lot about parents and advocacy. Let's turn, because we know about half of our audience are educators. Can you tell us that, the one or two things that you would want an educator to take from this conversation? Like, what could they do or think about changing or doing reframing or doing differently today? Like, what could they do?
So I think I'm gonna separate this out. I usually am inclusive, but I'm gonna separate this out for our gen ed teachers and for our
Mm-hmm.
special ed
Okay.
teachers.
Makes sense.
Um, for our gen ed teachers, I would like to see you being more proactive about inviting kids to your classroom, learning how that will work, how how that can work, learning about the kids that are connected to your classroom that might not be in there all the time. For instance, um, do all of the kids in your classroom have a desk? So if they come into your classroom for that inclusion experience, do they have a desk? Do they have a cubby? Do they have all of the things that the other kids need? Or when they come in, are they just visiting? Right?
Mm,
So work on making your classroom a place where all of those kids belong and set the stage for that. Um, so many times I see, kids in self-contained, they have these inclusive opportunities, but there's nowhere to sit, right? They have to
right.
shuffle around. They're not prepared for that. So I want to, for gen ed teachers, be more proactive about making sure that when those kids come in, they do feel like they belong. Oh, this is
Mm-hmm.
this is, and also I'm really thinking about like the lower grades while I'm talking, but if you have an activity that is going on, like an art project or anything that you think that this kid would be really successful in this and would really enjoy this experience, low demand, low not high stakes activity. They don't have to be sitting down the whole time. Think about that for the week. And then go to that special education teacher and say, here are the times that we're doing this. Well, I want those kids in here because they're going to love it. Right. Invite those kids. I did write an article one time about gen ed teachers holding the key to inclusivity and how much power they have in that. So if they want to be more inclusive, all they have to do is do it because you have the control in that situation. And then for special education teachers, I just implore you to start learning outside of the school system, right? A book, a podcast, whatever it is. If you like books on tape, there's book lists. Ginger will show you the website later, but like I have book lists that you can choose a book up there and just start learning a little bit more about your neurodivergent kids from a different angle. And see how you can use that knowledge to change one or two things, right? Just one or two things about your class or your environment. Learn about universal design and learning, right? All of these things can help you support your kids better, help your kids be more successful. Read Ginger's book, right? That's a fantastic book. Learn about building the skills before expecting the skills to be there, that kind of thing. Really look at those compliance goals and say, how can let's fix this. Let's look at a different way of supporting this child. Like, what skills does my kid need to be able to do this, right? If the compliance goal is my kid will, the child will use self-soothing strategies to calm themselves down. Does your kid have any of those skills yet?
Skills, that's right.
Back it up a little bit and say, okay, well, maybe my kid needs to build a list of things that actually bothers them or that they have a hard time with. Back up those skills so that they can actually build the skills and then you can see them. We can't expect a 6-year-old to do that. We just can't.
Amen. Is there anything else? We've talked about so much, but there's so much more, and we don't have all the time in the world, but have we covered is there anything left that you feel like you want to say, before we wrap up?
Yeah, always. There always is. I do want to say that the inability to communicate is in itself traumatic.
Yes.
So if you are an educator, you're a parent, you're a doctor, you're anybody around a kid that is not able to communicate effectively, that child needs access to a robust AAC system. They do not have to learn how to do this first or like the core board first or anything like that. They need access to that system. And everybody has an obligation to make that happen, because what I see happening is everybody's passing the buck on that, right? So the people in eligibility in the school district, they're saying, oh, well, they'll get that once their case manager has. And the case manager is saying, oh, well, they should have done that in eligibility, so they must not need one. And I see the doctor, I don't see any doctors that are doing evaluations for kids mentioning AAC devices, even the Centers for Excellence, right? They're not doing it. I see kids coming fresh from those developmental pediatricians. I see them coming, fresh from an evaluation, a comprehensive evaluation, and no mention of communication. So that's my high horse for the day.
That's the hill you're going to die on today. Let's say that.
Always.
Exactly. Always. That makes
always.
sense.
Communication. I mean, it will seclude them from.
Right. Well, and it is traumatizing to not be understood, to not be able to participate in communication. It just is.
And it adds to the cycle of presuming incompetence for the
Yes.
I mean, it just adds to it. It's like a snowball effect. So yeah, I think that if you don't know about it, ask me, ask anybody that, ask an AAC user as a group on Facebook.
Yeah.
Like just, really, really push for that. And that's part of federal law, special education law, is that every time there's an IEP meeting, you should be looking at that assistive technology piece.
Mm-hmm.
And not all I see, but so many times I see it's just filled in that we talked about this and the kid doesn't need it. And it really needs to be flushed out.
So good. So how can listeners get a hold of you and your resources? I mean, I will attach them, but yeah, plug away.
So I do have a website, notanautismmom.com. It has a lot of book lists up there. They haven't been, I will just caveat with that, they haven't been updated in the past year and a half because I've just been like, everywhere doing everything. But there are some really good books to start with. And from there, you'll find your own, right? You'll find your own books to start reading because you'll know who the authors are. You'll know who to look for. You'll be on that path. It also has children's books that are amazing. So if you want to stock that library, you can do that with those books. And I have actually taken on a new role. And so I am working with families in my state in Virginia as part of our parent training center. So I have not been doing the work that I've been doing nationally with parents. So I've just been working in that capacity. But my email address is notanautismmom@gmail.com. If you need me, you can get in touch with me that way. I also have a book club on Facebook. It's called That Awesome Book Club. And it's got like 16,000 members now.
Yeah. Awesome, like AU-SOME.
SOME. Yeah.
Love it.
And so I'm there sometimes, and I'm around. I'm accessible. I have a Facebook page, Not an Autism Mom, and I'm pretty good about answering messages there. So, yeah.
Yeah, you're amazing, and we will link all that in the show notes.
Well, we're sorry that you can't reach nationally right now as far as you can, but parent training centers are so critical to the process.
It's that ripple effect you've
so
got
glad
going.
that you're there for the Virginian children in that way. So thank you, Meghan. I've learned a lot just from our conversation. It's been a delight to meet you and to hear about your really important work.
Well, y'all are doing such important work as well. So thank you for having me. Always. Thank you.
Awesome. Yeah. And thank you all for listening in. This has been another episode, and we will catch you on the next one. Thanks, everybody.
And that's a wrap for today's episode of Regulated and Relational. Next time, Callie Flocks, a teaching artist, educator, and author of A Teacher's Guide to Resilience Through the Arts, will be our guest, and we'll talk with Julie and Ginger about using the arts as a healing tool. A special thanks to Joe Kramer for donating music. To learn more about the Attachment and Trauma Network, visit us at www.attachedtrauma.org. I'm Lauren Cassis, and as always, thank you for listening.